welcome back to the channel. I'm back again with another hyperlapse tutorial, and this time is with the DJI Mini 3 Pro. Now in the past, we haven't had the hyperlapse function on the Mini drones. The Mavic Mini, the DJI Mini 2, we will have to use, in order to get the hyperlapse, we will have to use the time photo function and hold down the sticks in a single position for an extended period of time to maintain a slow rate of speed. But now that we have the option to do hyperlapses, just like the other DJI drones, it makes it a lot easier. And also when we use the raw photos, instead of using the generated hyperlapse coming out of the drone, we can create a nice looking hyperlapse, especially at night. So in this video, I'm going to show you the particular settings that I use to capture a hyperlapse at night with the light streaks from the cars passing by on the road. But before we get started, if you enjoy drone reviews, tips, tricks, tutorials, and cinematic videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any of my content. All right, so we're up and at 'em, and we're gonna head over to this sign over here. The sign that's in the middle of the screen there, and I'm going to record a little bit in 24 frames per second. I'll put it in auto. I didn't really feel like messing with the settings right now, but I'm just going to head over here, show you a little footage as we head over here. So I didn't start out with a full battery, so you can get 2 hyperlapses. I'm using the Battery Plus, the extended battery, but you can knock out 2 hyperlapses, 2 10-second hyperlapses on one battery if you set up your hyperlapses really quick, or you use another battery, say the standard battery, to set up your hyperlapses, and then do both hyperlapses on one Battery Plus. So I'm set up where I want it to be to start my hyperlapse. Now we'll go into the hyperlapse smart function. So I'm going to go into waypoints, and those red dots that you see on here, I have the focus peaking setting on, so I'll know that my image is in focus. To start off in waypoints, I want to set up my settings first. So I want to go to, this is key, you want to use the Pro settings. And to start off, you want to start off with your ISO as low as possible. And right now, as you can see, with my ISO low as possible, with a 2-second shutter speed, I'm getting an even exposure. Down here in the right-hand corner, you see MM as which reads 0.0. That means your exposure is even, it's at 0. Now, if I lower my shutter speed down to 1.3 seconds, that makes the image darker because the shutter is closing tighter. You can see it changes my exposure value. But what I want to do today is capture the light streaks. In order to capture the longest possible light streaks, I will put it at 2 seconds. Now, I am at an even exposure. I'm not sure, it may overexpose at some point once I move along, but we'll see. And but the trade-off with this is that your photos, individual photos, aren't going to be as crisp. There will be a little blur in your photo, but just like with your video, if you set your shutter speed at a slower shutter speed, then you'll get that natural motion blur. So basically, in our hyperlapse, there's going to be, sort of a motion blur in the hyperlapse. However, the hyperlapse will look nice. I do want to have it as a 4K video. You want to maximize the resolution, and also you want to capture raw photos. So to start off, this is my starting point. I'm going to start from here. I'm going to make it a simple hyperlapse. I'm just going to go straight forward. But the settings, basically, I wanted to show you the settings that I'm using. So I want to click this box down there and set my first waypoint. And then I'm just going to move forward. And we're going to raise up a little bit and go over the sign and just keep going forward and maybe angle it just a little bit this direction and then raise up the gimbal. Now, the less movements that you do with the drone, the smoother your hyperlapse will be. So this is why I'm just going straight forward and just tilting the gimbal up. Now, if I were to go try to do a circle around it or something like that, it'll cause a lot of turbulence. So your hyperlapse may not be as good or as smooth as you want it. I mean, you could stabilize it. You will be stabilizing in post, but the less turbulence that you can get while you're capturing the hyperlapse, the better off you will be. Now, as you see down here, camera angle rotation or camber rotation angle, my rotation angle is still good. The lower you can keep that number, the better off you'll be. Now, if it wasn't a good angle, it will tell you that it's bad or not good or something like that. And you would just have to adjust it so you can get a nice angle. So this is going to be my second waypoint. Now you can set, I believe you can set up to like 40 waypoints or something like that. I think the maximum I do is maybe 3 or 4. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to do 2. And I'll probably move up a little bit further, make this a little longer. And maybe rotate the gimbal this way just a little bit off into the distance. And I'm going to keep it right there and then set the second waypoint right there. So from there, we can set our intervals. So the lowest we can do with a 2-second shutter speed is 4 seconds. Now, if I were to change my shutter speed down to, say, maybe 1 second or half a second, you see that it gives me the option for 3-second shutter speed or a 3-second interval. However, like I said, I wanted to get a full 2-second shutter speed. So the lowest interval that I can get is 4 seconds. Then from there, we can set our length. And I want to make it maybe 8-second hyperlapse. And that'll take, as you can see, it'll take 200 photos and it'll take 13 minutes and 20 seconds. So I'm going to set that. I should have enough battery left to, capture that hyperlapse. And from here, you have a choice to do it in reverse or do it in normal sequence, which is, from the first waypoint I set to this waypoint, the second waypoint, or I can do it in reverse and start from here and then go backwards. Now, that's good when you're actually running low on battery and you want to end closer to your home point. That actually helps out a lot. So from here, what I'm going to do is actually go in reverse since I'm already here. And I believe everything is set. All right, so we're going to start this hyperlapse right now. And we just press the shutter button here on the screen.
Heading to the first waypoint.
Now this is going to take the 200 photos, and what we're going to do is just go ahead and speed through this. And if anything happens, I'll address it, correct it, whatever I need to do, and then we'll carry on. All right, so let's speed this up. All right, so a couple things I do want to add. Before you go out and do your hyperlapse, make sure you know your area, especially at night. All right, if you're flying at night, make sure you know your area. Make sure you know any obstacles that may be in the way that you may not see, at night. So the best thing to do is visit the place or fly at the location during the day. Make sure, there's nothing around that you can run into because this does have, obstacle avoidance. But the obstacle avoidance does not work in low light. So just, take that tip and make sure, you do that before you do any type of night flying or any type of night hyperlapse. Also, to let you know, I am not using an ND filter on here as I'm doing the hyperlapse. In my previous videos, I did get questions that if I use, ND filters when I do the hyperlapses. Now, especially at night when it's, completely dark, you most likely not going to need an ND filter unless you're in a, really brightly lit area and you have your shutter speed cranked all the way up like I do to 2 seconds, but you are overexposed, then in that case you may have to use an ND filter just to bring down the exposure just a little bit. You may need to use an ND4 or something like that, but in most cases you probably won't need an ND filter when you're doing your hyperlapses. So those are just a couple tips you can take with you, and let's continue with the hyperlapse.
Shooting is nearing completion.
All right, so let's take a look at the hyperlapse that we got from the DJI Mini 3 Pro. Now it looks pretty good. You see the light streaks, the long light streaks there. But look in the shadows, as you can see, there's no detail in the trees or anything, any type of shadows. So what we're gonna do is take our raw photos and edit the raw photos and bring out those details in those shadows. And let's head over to the lab and see if we can make this hyperlapse look a little bit better. All right, so we're back in the lab, and what we're gonna do is edit the raw photos and then put it into a video editor and stitch the photos together into a nice looking hyperlapse. But before we do that, if you guys can do me a favor, if you guys can hit the like button, this does help YouTube push it out to more people who are searching for content just like this. Okay, so the first thing you wanna do is take out the SD card from your Mini 3, place it in your computer, and then open up your files. Now, you can easily find the photos. DJI so graciously gift wrapped them and put it in its own hyperlapse file. So if you click on the hyperlapse file here, you'll see all the hyperlapses that you've done, and this is the one that we want here. This is the one we're going to edit. And just to make sure, I'm going to take a look at it, and these are the ones. So from here, I'm going to select them all. So on the Mac, it's Command A, or on a PC, it's Control A. And then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to open it up with another application. So I use Adobe Camera Raw, and that's a plugin for After Effects. I got it with the After Effects. And in order to get to it, I have to open it up in another application, Adobe Bridge. So I'm going to open it up in Adobe Bridge. And I am using a Mac. So here are all my photos in Adobe Bridge. So I'm just going to select one and then select them all. And then I'm going to right click again and open in Camera Raw. Now Adobe Camera Raw is my editor of choice for photos. It's kind of similar to Lightroom, but it doesn't have all the functions. I don't believe it has all the functions of Lightroom, but it does suit my needs. So you can use any photo editor that you want to that can edit raw photos. So from here, I see all my photos in here. All of them were uploaded and they're all in sequential order, which is important. So I'm going to start with a base photo to do my edit. And I believe this photo of the sign is, a good starting point. So what we're going to do is start out with a basic edit, and I'm going to raise the shadows, and I'm going to take these shadows all the way up here. This was a really dark photo, and I want to try to push the shadows as far as I can. So I'm going to crank it all the way up here. I'm going to take these highlights down just a little bit. As you can see here, the lights are a little bit glary. So I'm going to take the highlights down just a little bit so it won't be as glary. And then also on the light streaks, if I adjust this again, you see the light streaks are a little bit glary too. I want to make them a little bit more defined. Go back over here. And then from here, I'm just going to raise the blacks just a little. I'm not going to raise it too much because then it'll start getting a little hazy looking. So if I crank this all the way up like that, you can see you can get a lot of definition in that, but I'm just going to crank it up just not too much. maybe to 10. All right, just keep a little bit of contrast in there. And then I'm going to give it a little clarity. I'm going to zoom in on here and crank up the clarity just a little, and you can see how it improves the image a little bit, maybe a little texture, just a little, not even that much. And I can dehaze it. I think I'm going to leave the dehazer alone right now. And I'm going to give it a little bit more saturation, just a tad, and then a little bit more vibrance. All right. Now from here, I'm going to adjust the temperature. Now the temperature looks okay for what I want, but that's the unique thing about editing, you know, your own hyperlapse. You can change it or do whatever you want with it. So you can take down the temperature, make it look cool, like some type of electric blue feel or something. I did that in one of my other hyperlapse videos. You can see the light streaks here, they're a little blue. You can change it like that if you want, or warm it up as much as you want. But I think I'm going to keep it around where I had it and just keep it like that. Then I'm going to go to the curves. So this is where you see even more improvement. Now, once I crank up the shadows a little bit more on the curves, you can see it brings out even more detail. Now you can see it's giving it a little bit of haze. So I'm going to go back up here, and at this point, that's when I'm going to use the dehazer and bring down the haze off of it a little bit. All right, so let's go back to the curves, and with these lights here, I'm going to take them down just a little, even more, just a little bit. Don't need to be too bright. And as I mentioned before in the video, I told you that, you know, with a 2-second shutter speed, your image is going to be a little bit blurry. However, it creates a natural motion blur, so it does look good in the hyperlapse. So don't worry about that. And then I can reduce the noise a little bit in the sky. You can see a little bit of noise in the sky and maybe down here somewhere. I'm going to reduce the noise just a little bit, give it a little bit of noise reduction, not too much. You got to be careful with this because it'll make your image look, you know, kind of soft. So when you give it some noise reduction, you can also, you know, give it a little bit sharpening too. All right, from here, by looking at my histogram here, you can see that the blues are clipping a little bit in the shadows. So to correct this, I'm going to go to the curves, go to the blue curve, and raise the blue shadows just a little bit. And keeping an eye on that histogram, I'm just going to raise it until it stops, until that warning goes away. So now my blues aren't clipping anymore, my highlights are good, and I think I'm good. And the image looks pretty decent. So from here, you can color grade a little bit more if you want. If you're into that, or you can add like a preset. I like adding the preset to the sky, and I think the blue drama is pretty good, and I could raise or lower the intensity of that. I don't want it black, so what I'm going to do is just leave it where it was, and I kind of like that blue drama. So if I compare the two, you can see it's pretty much a night and day difference, really. And if I click here, you can see there's a lot more detail in the shadows here, and the highlights aren't as glary as on the original photo. Now zoom into the streaks here. Streaks aren't as glary as well, as more defined streaks. Now what I could do is kind of give it a little bit, dehaze it a little bit more. So I'm going to go back in here, go back to basics, and give it a little bit more dehazer because it looks a little hazy. All right, without, you know, destroying what I already did. So there you go. I think that looks good. It looks pretty good. All right, so what we can do is just copy this, copy the edit settings, and then we're going to paste it onto all the other photos. So Control A or Command A on a Mac, and then paste the edit settings. And now that they're all the edits are pasted onto the other photos, you can go through and check. All right, so if I zoom in on here, you can see there's a little bit more definition in the shadows here. And I'm just going to look at my other photos, just make sure everything else is okay. And everything else looks okay. And if you need to make any adjustments to any other photo, just make sure you copy and paste whatever you did and then paste it onto the other ones, because you want everything to match up. So at this point, we're done. So what you want to do is click done, or prepare for your export in your favorite photo editor. So here I'm going to just click done. So all my photos are here. I'm just going to click them all. All the photos are exported, so we can close this out. All right, so all we need to do next is open up your favorite video editor, and my editor of choice is Final Cut Pro. All right, so I've already created a project, and this project is a 4K video. It's going to be rendered out in 4K and is at 24 frames per second or 23.98 frames per second. So when you are making up your project, just make sure it's in 4K, because you want it to be a 4K hyperlapse. So for here, I'm going to open up the file that I created, select all my photos, and then just drag them on to the timeline. Now, if I play this right now on this timeline, these photos are about 4 seconds long. And you don't want it 4 seconds long. You want it about 1 frame long. So I'm going to I have them all selected, and I'm going to go into modify, and I'm going to change duration. Now, from here, all I need to do is type in 1, and it changes the duration down to 1 frame, and then hit enter, and then it shrinks everything down. Also, as you can see, it's not filling in the entire aspect ratio. So what we can do is just go to Video Inspector, scroll down to where it says Spatial Conform, and then fill it in, and it just fills in. So if I play this now, it looks like a hyperlapse. Everything is coming together. However, it's not stable. You can see it's a little shaky. So what we're going to do is stabilize this, but you cannot stabilize it as photos. You have to stabilize it as a video. And someone suggested before that I create a compound, and then stabilize it from there. But that doesn't work. It doesn't give you the option to stabilize it. So what we need to do is export it and then re-import it, or import it back into Final Cut Pro. So let's export. All right, so everything is exported. So I'm going to get rid of all these photos, and then I'm going to open up the file to where I exported my video to, and just drag it on to the timeline there. And now I can stabilize it. You see, it gives me the option to stabilize, and just let it do its thing. And from there, press play, and it looks pretty smooth. So if you want to do another pass through on the stabilization, what you will have to do is export it again, and then re-import it and stabilize it again. Or you can use another software, any stabilizing software, or I use sometimes After Effects to do my stabilizations. So, it's your choice. And here are the two hyperlapses side by side. Okay, so with a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, you can make these hyperlapses look, pretty amazing. using the raw photos. Now remember, these also can be done in the vertical mode. If you're into YouTube Shorts, Instagram, TikTok, and stuff like that, you can do some creative things in vertical mode. If you're interested in more creative ways of editing your hyperlapses to music, let me know down in the comments below, and maybe I can do a video on that as well. If you missed any of my other hyperlapse videos, you can go ahead and check them out right here. Also, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any of my future content. But until next time, peace.